4 World Cups in the cabinet, but 0 appearances in 12 long years. This is the tactical tragedy of modern Italian football. Welcome, football purists, to the anatomy of a disaster. How does a nation that breathes, eats, and sleeps football suddenly find itself locked out of the biggest party on earth twice in a row? This is not just a story of bad luck or a missed penalty. This is the blueprint of a fallen empire, a slow-motion car crash of tactical stubbornness that left an entire nation weeping into their espresso.
To understand the fall, we must first look at the blinding light of the false dawn. Summer 2021, Wembley Stadium. The Azzurri are the kings of Europe. That magical night convinced the world, and perhaps the Italian hierarchy itself, that the Renaissance was complete. They played vibrant, attacking football. But this triumph was a beautiful illusion. It masked the underlying cracks in the foundation. Instead of evolving, Italy rested on their laurels. They believed the system that conquered Europe would automatically conquer the world, entirely blind to the fact that the rest of football was already adapting.
Post-Euro 2020, tactical stagnation set in like a plague. The fluid system that dazzled opponents became rigid, predictable, and utterly sterile. Opposing managers figured out the puzzle. They parked deep, choked the midfield, and dared Italy to break them down. And Italy simply forgot how to do it. The ball circulated endlessly in a horseshoe shape, side to side, possession for the sake of possession. The beautiful game turned into a mechanical routine. The element of surprise vanished, replaced by a stubborn insistence on a plan that was clearly broken, with absolutely no alternative in sight. At the heart of this tactical impotence is a glaring void, the desperate, agonizing lack of a clinical number 9. Italy, the land of legendary strikers, suddenly found itself entirely toothless. They can build the play beautifully from the back, orchestrate intricate triangles in the middle of the park, but when the ball enters the penalty area, it enters a graveyard. Cross after cross, through ball after through ball, met with hesitant touches and scuffed shots. You cannot win football matches if you cannot put the ball in the back of the net. It is brutally simple. Because there was no focal point in the box, the entire offensive burden fell squarely onto the shoulders of the wingers. The plan became entirely one-dimensional. Give the ball wide, hope for a moment of individual magic, and pray. But international defenses are far too smart for that. Opponents simply double-teamed the flanks, neutralizing the pace and trickery. The wide players, isolated and exhausted, were forced into impossible angles. The attacking machinery sputtered and choked, relying on miracles rather than methodical build-up, leaving the forwards isolated and the fans pulling their hair out.
But the true tragedy was not just the lack of goals. It was the crumbling of the defensive transition. Italy, historically the grand masters of defending, forgot how to protect their own fortress. Pushing high up the pitch to break down low blocks, they left acres of space behind. When possession was lost, the transition was catastrophically slow. The defenders, lacking the recovery pace of their youth, were continually exposed to devastating counterattacks. Opponents realized they only needed one good long ball to shatter the legendary Italian wall. It was defensive suicide disguised as modern football.
The disconnect between the midfield and the attack became a gaping chasm. The midfield maestros, capable of completing hundreds of passes in a single game, found themselves orchestrating a silent symphony. They dictated the tempo, yes, but to what end? The passes lacked penetration. The creative sparks were instantly extinguished by a lack of movement off the ball. It was a possession trap. They held the ball for 70% of the match, but never truly threatened the opposition goal. They were dominating the statistics, yet entirely losing the actual game of football.
Yet, amidst this tactical ruin, you cannot question the heart of the players. The fighting spirit of the Azzurri remained fiercely intact. These men were trying to carry a broken system on their backs. They tackled with ferocity. They covered every blade of grass. They bled for the shirt. But pure passion cannot compensate for a fundamentally flawed structural setup. You could see the sheer desperation in their eyes, running themselves into the ground, trying to force an outcome through willpower alone. It was a heroic, yet ultimately futile display of grit against tactical failure.
And then came the nightmare, the qualifiers, the do-or-die moments where champions are supposed to rise. Instead, Italy crumbled under the immense psychological weight, dominating the shot count, suffocating the opponent, only to concede a singular, heartbreaking goal in the dying minutes. The silence in the stadium was deafening. It was not a defeat born of a lack of effort, but a defeat born of absolute tactical impotence. They simply could not break down a resolute defense, and they paid the ultimate price. A nation gasped as the door was slammed shut in their faces once more.
On the touchline, the manager's dilemma was painfully obvious. The architect of their European glory now looked completely bereft of ideas. He paced the technical area, shouting instructions that seemingly vanished into the cold night air. The loyalty to the players who won him the Euro became his downfall. He trusted the old guard too much, too long, refusing to inject the tactical dynamism required to break the deadlock. It is the classic trap of the successful coach,
an inability to dismantle your own masterpiece when the world has already moved on and solved your riddles.
This rigid loyalty created a devastating generational gap. Exciting young talents full of pace, directness, and hunger were left rotting on the bench. Meanwhile, the veterans struggled to execute a high-intensity game plan with heavy legs. The transitional period was terribly mismanaged. Instead of gradually integrating the next generation to provide fresh tactical options, the system relied on fading stars. The youth watched helplessly as the empire burned, knowing they possessed the exact profile of players needed to bypass the stubborn defenses, yet they were never given the keys to the kingdom.
If you look at the raw data, the tragedy deepens. The statistical anomaly is absolutely staggering. Historic levels of possession, immense expected goals numbers, dozens of corners, and countless entries into the final third. On paper, Italy dominated nearly every opponent they faced. But football is not played on paper. It is played on grass, where the final touch, the clinical finish, and defensive solidity are the only currencies that truly matter. They were the absolute champions of expected goals, but the tragic losers of actual reality. A brutal lesson that statistics can hide a rotten core.
The weight of the jersey became an anchor. The iconic blue shirt, adorned with 4 golden stars, suddenly felt incredibly heavy. Every missed pass, every squandered chance, echoed with the ghosts of past legends. The pressure from a demanding media, from passionate fans who view football as a religion, paralyzed the current squad. They were not just playing against the opposition, they were playing against history. The fear of failure consumed them, stripping away the joy and the freedom that defined their previous successes. The empire's history was no longer an inspiration. It became a terrifying burden. In the stands, the heartbreak was visceral. The tifosi, the beating heart of Italian football, watched their beloved Azzurri fail to board the plane to the World Cup for an unthinkable second consecutive time. Tears washed away the face paint. Flags were lowered in silent mourning. This is a nation that defines its summers by World Cup runs, by the honking of horns in city squares, by the collective embrace of a footballing triumph. To take that away leaves a cultural scar that goes far beyond the boundaries of a pitch. It is a national grieving process.
The blueprint of a fallen empire is laid bare. A tale of tactical stubbornness, a missing talisman, and an over-reliance on the ghosts of the past. But empires fall so they can be rebuilt. The 4 stars on the crest still shine, demanding a revolution. Italian football must tear up the old blueprints, embrace tactical innovation, and trust the new generation to rise from the ashes. The World Cup stage will feel incredibly empty without them, But the hard truth remains. Football owes no one a living. Italy must evolve or risk wandering in this wasteland forever.